So let's just have a relaxed conversation, nothing to be nervous about, nothing to be worried about. There's no pop quiz. You're not going to be graded on this afterwards, at least not on your permanent record. You know. Good afternoon, everyone. City of Kyle, watching across the city, across the globe, and many of you all here today. We're excited to have you for another City of Kyle event that we're hosting, but we have a great partnership today. The Hayes CISD, Diversity Advisory Council, has partnered with the City of Kyle to do an inaugural program, and I'd like to bring forward the president of the Hayes CISD Diversity Advisory Council, Peyton Pettis, to tell us a little bit more about why we're here today.
Mr. Ellison. Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for attending our Diversity Advisory Council's first ever One Community, One Book event. My name is Peyton Perez and I am the DAC chairperson. We would like to welcome all of you who are here physically as well as those of you who are joining us online today. Before we get started, we would like to thank a few people. First, we would like to thank Kyle City Council for partnering with us to make this event possible, especially the communications team and Councilmember Ellison, who will be moderating for us today. We would like to thank Dr. Wright and Ms. Maribel Cedillo for the support of the DAC, as well as all of our DAC members. I would like to personally thank Grace Castañeda for her coordination of all of our brilliant panelists, as well as our panelists themselves for serving in this event today. Special thanks to Patricia Melgar-Cook, Sylvia Holt, and Debbie Lanyon for all things Spanish translation, as well as Catherine Lively and her Johnson High School culinary students for the cookies that they provided for us today. Finally, thank you to all of you for showing up today, excited to engage in meaningful conversations. With that, I will turn it over to Mr. Ellison to get us started.
Thank you, Peyton. On behalf of the city, we are extremely excited that the Hayes CISD Diversity Advisory Council has chosen the City of Kyle to host the inaugural event. We are super excited about promoting community organization, camaraderie, and literacy, of course, and joining in on reading one book as a community of our city and our school district together. We hope you all have many more of these to come, and whether it's here or in other communities, we will certainly support it. All right, well, we are excited to have a great discussion about the book that was selected by the council called Seedfolks by Paul Fleischman. But first, we have some very exciting people to lead our discussion today, so I'm going to introduce our panel. Here today, we have to my far left, Miss Jennifer Higa-Rolls with Hayes CISD. Excuse me here. Jennifer is a first grade teacher at Tobias Elementary School and worked for Hayes for 12 years. She is originally from Honolulu, Hawaii, and has loved living in Buda for the past 14 years. Aside from being a mother, teaching is her greatest passion, and she considers it a privilege to serve the families in our district. Thank you, Jennifer, for being here today. Next, we have Mr. Johnny Kemp. Mr. Kemp was born in Austin and raised in the City of Kyle, Buda area. He went to Camino Real Elementary, Barton Middle School, Hayes High School, and graduated from Live Oak Academy. Thank you for being here with us today. Next, we have Audre Knepp. Let's see. Audre is a senior for the Diversity Advisory Council. Oh, I'm sorry, a junior, pushing you up a little bit further, at Hayes High School. She's lived in Kyle for 8 years now with her family of 6, including 2 sisters and a wonderful brother. I like how you added the wonderful for the brother there. She's a member of the Diversity Advisory Council as the student representative for Hayes High School, and am thoroughly involved in various school committees and clubs at Hayes. Thank you, Audre, for being here with us today. Next, we have Michelle Winn. Michelle Winn is a counselor, lived in Kyle since 2002, and has been an educator for 33 years, with 23 years as a school counselor, 15 in Kyle, Texas, and 8 in Southeast Austin. She has always had a passion for families and kids, meeting them where they are at, and with a strong belief that learning never stops, and that we are stronger together. Michelle will be retiring from education this year to pursue her LPC and her other passion, music. She hopes to become more involved in the community as well as spend more time with her family. Thank you for being here today, Ms. Winn. Moving down the line, we have Dr. Fernando Medina. Dr. Medina has worked in public education for more than 29 years. Prior to being named the Chief Human Resources Officer for Hayes CISD, he served as the Chief Human Capital Officer for Austin ISD. Dr. Medina has also served as the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, Executive Director of Human Resources, and Principal in Richardson ISD, where he led Dover Elementary to exemplary status and ultimately achieving the coveted National Blue Ribbon School Award. Thank you, Dr. Medina, for being with us here today. And then last but certainly not least, we have Councilmember LaVonia Horne-Williams. Councilmember Williams is out of Buda, representative of Buda, Texas, elected this past November. City of Buda is certainly proud to have her as a representative. She has lived in Buda since 2001 and currently represents the citizens at large of Position 3. As a 21-year resident of Buda, she has experienced and seen a great deal of growth in the city. Councilmember Horne-Williams is an active member of the Buda community and believes in establishing strong, responsible leadership that fosters an environment of community. Thank you for being with us here today. So those were their official capacities, but since this is a family conversation, we're going to be talking by first names here today, and we're going to have a great discussion here. Before we get into that, though, we have a video welcome from our Diversity Advisory Council that we'll play for our audience, and we're getting that queued up right now. He's getting that pulled up here. I just want to let the audience know, if you want to go to menti.com on your phones, we will have some opportunities for the audience to also participate in our discussion today. So if you want to go ahead and pull up menti.com, that's MENTI.com, we'll be providing the code that you'll need to get to the questionnaire here a little bit later.
The Hayes CISD Diversity Advisory Council serves to engage in open and honest conversations about how we can make our district even better.
Our council has been working hard to examine opportunities within the district in an effort to increase access to achievement for all.
It is through partnerships with the community that we are able to make change, celebrate growth, and love on our neighbors.
I joined the Diversity Advisory Council to help inspire, encourage, and empower students of all abilities here at Hayes CISD to reach their maximum potential.
So what does the work of the Diversity Advisory Council mean to me? First of all, I think it's very important. I think the council provides a time and a place and a space for us to come together with all of our background to talk about issues that matter to each of us, because each of us brings a different perspective regardless of our race, gender, ethnicity. I think that being on the council is a wonderful opportunity to create a vision for the future.
Hi, I'm Audrey. I go to Hayes High School and I am part of the Diversity Advisory Council. So I joined the council to be able to bring a voice to all the students and peers who aren't brave enough to bring up their own conflicts with diversity and inclusion. So with my big personality and strong-mindedness, I'm able to kind of just bring a voice and be an outlet for students across my campus.
Hello, my name is Joseph. I am the Dalton representative, and I like being on the CISD Diversity Council because I like being able to give positive feedback and advise the district to make changes for policies and like give positive feedback to them and negative feedback where it's needed. And I'm excited for this One Community, One Book event because it can bring in different people from different walks of life and different backgrounds to one place to talk about like one specific thing and even like get to know each other and branch out and talk about different like topics and that sort of thing. So come to it. It is a very good event. It will bring hopefully bring the community together, and see you there.
We're building partnership with trust.
One book.
One community.
One community.
One community.
One community.
Together is better.
Wonderful. We're excited to once again be a part of this event. I remember the first time when we saw that video, I said to myself, that young man has a future in diplomacy there. I say diplomacy over politics. But no, so we're excited to have our panel here to just have a little open discussion here. So we're going to start this out here. Anyone can raise their hand to be involved here. Just for the audience sake, we'll have the panel raise their hand if they want to participate in a particular conversation starter here, and then we'll open the discussion up to them. So our first initial question is just tell us a little bit about your role in the community and what intrigued you or inspired you to be a part of this event. I'll have a raise of hands if anybody who would like to give input on this part. Looks like you're the only one. Let's go for it, Michelle.
I'm the only one. So I've been in part of Kyle community since 2002 and was hired by Hayes CISD in 2006 as their counselor. I live in Plum Creek and I have two kiddos. One is 25 and one is 16. Both, the oldest graduate of Hayes High School and the younger one currently a sophomore, going to be a junior. Both biracial children. And when I moved to this community, we only had like 9,000 people in Kyle. Things were not quite changed yet. And we were growing and people were moving in, and some of the people that lived here, it was very difficult to have people coming in from the outside, from Austin, San Antonio. So it was kind of intriguing as this was brought up. And then the book as well, just the growth and how we grow as individuals and we grow as a community together and come together with one mission. So it was just something that I just really have always been very passionate about.
Thank you, Michelle. That's actually a great transition into our next major part of the discussion, which we're going to talk about the book now. So Seedfolks uses vignettes to intimately share the lives of multiple characters. For all of you all that have certainly read the book, each chapter is a different character's perspective. Are there any characters that you relate to personally or that seem familiar in some way to you? We'll go ahead and get hands as well if you want to join this part of the discussion. All right, Johnny, you were first up. Go ahead and open this up.
All right, sorry guys. So I really related to Wendell a lot because I also clean schools. I'm a custodian over at Negley. And I thought it was really touching how he, took the initiative to go out there and help the little girl. And then whenever she walked up, she was, a little scared at first. But, I thought it was just really, really nice of him. And like I said, I relate to him, so.
Thank you. Fernando.
At the beginning of the book, it opens up with an older lady who had been in the community for some time. And when she looked down her window and she saw the little Asian girl, at first she thought she was up to no good, right? And so at the beginning, I thought to myself, how many times do we, or do I, sometimes do that? But then at the same time, I related to the little Asian girl. Because, as a Hispanic, as a brown man, as, growing up, I had so many experiences where I was that little girl, where people, judged me because of my race and my color, and I had some experiences, and so I found myself, looking through the eyes of both of those characters. So it was really interesting to me.
Great perspective. Anybody else want to share on that topic? LaVonia.
Okay, so Leona, I guess, would be mine. My grandmother passed back in 2018, but I can remember as a kid growing up, we never went to doctors. Grandma could fix it with some spider web or some honey or some Crisco. So, everything was all natural. We grew our own food, the whole 9 yards. So I totally get being in a community where community took care of community. If there was someone who didn't have food, my grandmother would cook and we'd share with whoever didn't have. So that piece really reigned home for me.
I love that. And that transitions into a question I'm going to come off script with. Is there anything recently or within the past couple of years that you all can think of that might have related to bringing a community together for a greater good or a reason to bring the community together? Anybody want to jump on that and relate that to this book? Audre.
Yeah, so we all went through COVID, right? And one of my favorite parts, of this whole terrible situation was when Plum Creek, we would organize dates and kind of events, but, like secluded, where the community would be able to, come together. So an example of this would be our sidewalk chalk day. And for a whole week, everyone got their chalk out and we all drew pictures. And of course, with being secluded and whatnot, you could walk around, at your own pace and by yourself, not putting out any risk and being able to see everyone else's pictures. And the chalk was very, intriguing because you have the little children's art, but you also have, people running for positions in the community, right? And they would just put them out on the sidewalk and you get to see everything, but you'd also see pride flags and all sorts of racially inclusive images that kind of just brought out the community in a way that, because you're walking out there and you can't see anyone. And so it's really interesting to see everyone shine a light on their own personality without everyone having to be gathered together. And so I think this book kind of portrays that through the garden.
Wonderful connection there. You knocked it out of the park with that. Anybody else want to comment on that? Michelle.
Well, I was going to say also COVID, but as you were talking, I was also thinking about the development of the Diversity Council. I think sometimes with adversity, we can grow and we can come together. And without the adversity, I don't think we would have had the Diversity Council and been even able to be here today, to converse about some very difficult topics.
That's fantastic. Any of y'all lived through Snowvid or Snowmageddon or whatever they want to call it now? Another event that happened where our community needed to come together, right? Anybody want to have any stories or something they'd like to share with us in regards to that? Jennifer?
So before COVID, I think, and Snowmageddon, my neighbors and I, we all got along well. I've got great neighbors, but we didn't interact all that much. And all of a sudden, when we had no electricity, when there were supply chain issues and there were no milk or no bread, we all kind of came together. And I would say, hey, I'm going to HEB. What do you need? You know, and even if we could only buy 2 loaves, we were looking out for each other in that way. And when my husband was working through all of it and couldn't come home, my neighbors helped me get my hot water going. But we also shared vegetables. I learned that my neighbors gardened, and we started sharing vegetables, and our relationship changed, it shifted, but for the better. We always got along, but there's something about helping each other, being vulnerable with one another, needing each other. I think that brings you together. So yeah, that's.
Yeah, that's a great response there. I'm going to go ahead and give my camera guy a cue. We're going to go to the second Mentimeter question there on our roll sheet there. Mr. Grant, we'll go to the second Mentimeter question. I'll give you an opportunity to get that pulled up. We'll continue the panel discussion, though. So thinking about what we were already just talking about, going back to the book, what do you think were some of the guiding forces that brought these community members together for what they were doing in the book here? Fernando.
See if I can get this going here. For me, I saw hope throughout the entire book. You know, from the very beginning with that little girl, with that seed, the hope of growing that plant and bringing that nostalgia of her father back, all the way clear through the hope of that little boy wanting the lettuce to grow so his dad could make all this money and get that bicycle. Clear to the very, very end, at the end of the book, the hope of having another garden for another season. So hope through the entire book, I thought, was the guiding force.
That's a great observation. Anyone else want to take into that? Audrey.
I think one of the main guiding forces, and that was the very beginning, you have the little girl. And I may be a little biased as a child myself, but I feel like children have a way of bringing the community together, because you see her out there, and obviously the first 2 stories were them about being scared for her and being scared for her seeds. And so, you know, I feel like children kind of allow us to form those kind of connections and inflict those kind of emotions that helps bring the community together without having to be so strict and adultish, I guess.
Adultish, like that. Might have to use that one. No, certainly, I love this discussion. You know, the hope was certainly presented throughout the book, whether it was for a bicycle and his father trying to make money, whether it was with Curtis and trying to win back his girl with the tomato garden, to all kinds of other different things. And if you haven't read the book, I'm trying, you know, there's a few spoiler alerts here, but I still would say highly recommend to go read the book. But there is hope presented throughout throughout the book on many different facets there as well. Really, really good observations there. So let's talk about the community here a little bit more. So from you all, and you all have various different perspectives here that you all portray throughout the community, what do you feel is the best way to improve or repair or build upon communities and have more constructive interactions with one another? What are some of the lessons we also learned from Seedfolks that we could do that? Hands? All right, Michelle, it's you again.
Sorry, I have a lot to say. So I love how Wendell said, "A child shall lead us all." That, I think, was just key, and what you said is perfect. And I think that with the younger generation that we have here in Kyle, they will be the ones that lead us. We old-timers are going to be on our way out, retiring and doing other things, but hopefully one of the things that Anna said in the book was how she noticed the community was still very split, even with the garden. So the roads were split black and white, and then the garden, it still became very split. The barbed wire fences, the doors, everything was very split. But as you went through the book, people noticed that each other needed help, and it was usually led by a child, and that's when they reached out to the child to help. So I think that as we reach out here in our own community to children and schools and helping the younger generation, I think they're going to be the ones that lead us.
I love that response. Any other thoughts on that particular part there? LaVonia, let's go with you.
I was going to say shared values. So I think as a community, we have to have some basic shared values. And she's right, with our kids and the kids that are in school now, just kind of creating that sense of community within them and the whole sense of giving back and having an opportunity to share what they have and not creating a society of selfishness, right? And then it becomes something that perpetuates from them to the next generation to the next generation. And I think that happened here in the book. Once they all found that shared value where they may have had the separate parts of the garden, ultimately, if someone else came into the garden to try to mess with it, they all kind of banded together and decided we're going to protect what we have. So that's going to be the really important piece for our communities.
Love that response. Fernando, did you
Sure.
want to add to that?
I was going to say, I think events just like this. I think I love the idea that the book is Seedfolks. We are Seedfolks. This whole is seeding this idea of talking about diversity, I think is important. Finding different ways to create new Seedfolks around different activities that bring us together to celebrate and to talk about our diversity and how to leverage it.
Fantastic point there, Fernando. Towards the end of the book, we find Florence tell us what Seedfolks finally means, right? And it's she says, "My father called them our Seedfolks because they were the first of our family there." And she's referencing when her family moved from Louisiana to Colorado, her Hispanic family there. So wonderful point here. This is a Seedfolks in itself, and we can do those opportunities many times. Anybody else want to piggyback on that down here? Jennifer.
Sorry, I forgot about the button for a second. But I think recognizing through the book Seedfolks that we're all more alike, I think, than we are different. You know, my dad traveled a lot, and he always told me that the more you travel, the more you realize we're all the same. And I think seeing these different people from different backgrounds and different ages, all wanting to feel as though they have value and some connection to nature, you know, and what we can control when it comes to nature and the hope that it gives us when we're able to grow something. And so I think as a community, seeing ourselves in each other and finding something common where we can all relate to one another, I think empathy and seeing ourselves in each other is a really important part. And I think in this book, that's kind of what happens. You know, there's older people who don't speak English, and to feel valued, the wisdom they have about growing and farming and how they feel value in their community once again. You know, I think, and children relating to that, people who are middle-aged relating to that, I think that as a community, if we could do the same, you know, that's a powerful thing.
Really great point. I'm actually glad you touched right into that. I feel like you're all in my head. So one of the things that they did when they had the rain, right, in the book, and they all went to go take shelter, all right, and they were, there was, I forget what character it was, but they were talking about how there were many different languages, and because it's, for you all that don't know, this is takes place in Cleveland, and it's a vacant lot that is trashed, and these folks come together, and they're from all different walks of life, and it talks about in the book that there were a lot of immigrants in Cleveland, so these folks were from all over the world, and so they didn't all share the same language, so they communicated through pantomime, all right? That's what they talk about in the book, and so let's share maybe from you all's different perspectives in your professions or personal lives where maybe you haven't been able to communicate the most effective way with people in your community. What are some of the ways that you all have seen how to break down those barriers or still connect with each other? Anybody want to share on that? Certainly, Michelle.
Sorry. Well, I think in the book, and I think it does parallel real life as far as we're often we protect ourselves because we're fearful, and we're fearful of what's out there and what's different from us. And so, how do we communicate and break that barrier? Listening to understand. And so I don't think it's about communicating as far as speaking, but I think it's about listening. And seeing where that person's perspective is coming from, because even in the book, toward the end, when the shop owner and I can't remember her name, when she called him a dirty foreigner, with the change, and she came back and she apologized because she built that relationship at that point. So I think it's really listening and learning who the other person is and where they're coming from, rather than speaking to speak your piece, but really listening to understand where they're at.
Wonderful response. There's the older Polish woman with Amir in Amir's chapter. Amir was probably one of my favorite chapters personally. But you talked about, I love what you said, it's more than just speaking and communication and that fear of what we don't know, right? So I'm going to test you all's knowledge a little bit here. So there was a character that was recognized that didn't have his own chapter, but had a very important point, Royce. So let's talk a little bit about Royce. All right, so we just talked about, Michelle just spoke about not knowing someone and maybe coming to assumptions or different things about somebody and not really understanding until you've heard from them. So anybody want to share what they might have learned from reading the part about Royce and maybe how you've seen things in your community happen, or what ways we can do to combat the things that we see that happen with Royce in the book? Johnny.
Yeah, so that part was, excuse me, that part was really touching with Royce because he really stepped up and he took the initiative, and everybody that was around thought he was kind of scary looking, thought, you know, he wouldn't be a nice guy, but then whenever the robber steals a woman's purse, he and a few other people, they chase him down, and he puts his pitchfork to him basically, and gets the purse back, and they wait for the police. So I think it's good to, I know this can be stereotypical, but to not judge a book by its cover, you know, to really try to understand somebody, to not think just based off what you see, to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and to understand that everybody comes from different places and everybody grows up differently, everybody has different values and morals, and yeah, Royce really was a good part.
Anybody else want to comment on that part? All right. Well, anybody, we spoke about Amir in that particular chapter, and Amir tells us his perspective of what he thinks the garden's greatest benefit is. Before I share with the audience what that is, from the panel's perspective, when you were reading through the book, what did you all see was the greatest benefit of the garden? You got a big smile from Audrey, but do you want to jump in on that? Okay, go for it.
All right, so I actually have that page pulled up right now because Amir was probably my favorite character too. And can I share what it is? Because okay, so he says, but the greatest benefit was not the relief to the eyes, but to make our eyes see our neighbors. I think that's such, you know, and we were talking about how these events kind of bring our community together, and you get to see certain faces and kind of explore the diversity and in our community. And I think that's kind of what happened in this book. And so reading through it, it kind of all clicked when you read that line, right? And it's, you know, who's really out there like to see like the pretty colors of like the plants and whatnot, but more so they all pass and they realize that they want to be part of that community. They want to kind of, you know, stretch out. And later on he says to like find an excuse to let their friendliness out. And so I feel like that was, he kind of captured it perfectly there, just to, you know, want to be a part of the community.
Wonderful. I like that response. Anyone else want to go ahead, Michelle?
Well, I had written down too that he said the purple gave a reason to break the rules. So the purple eggplants, and not that there were rules that they had to be, you know, stay with their own kind, I guess you could say, but it gave them a reason to cross those and to get to actually know people and to break the understood rules that society had kind of set up prior to the garden.
Excellent response. I saw hands down here as well. You all want to add to that, LaVonia?
Okay, I'll just add something really quick. I think oftentimes we can see those barriers as we get older in how we separate ourselves and create these unnamed rules. But if you've ever watched children play on a playground, they don't care this is my friend. I love this person. And you're like, you don't even know that person. And they're like, but it doesn't matter because they're nice to me. They're a kind person. And so they look for those very pure values in each other. And we as adults, that's something that we tend to not look at. We don't look for that. We see all the other things that create reasons why we shouldn't be a community. And so we've got to get back to what we teach our children, which is love you one another. We all want to be good people. We all want them to be good people. And we have to start practicing those things.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Anybody else want to add to that point there or that topic? Talking about a little bit going back to Royce and then the Polish lady with Amir. He tells her about the time that they had the interaction in the store, and she began to feel so much regret for that. He said her eyes became huge. She apologized to me over and over again. She kept saying, quote, "Back then, I didn't know it was you." Isn't that interesting? We have social media and online personalities and different things that we are with people, and we might say things about people or interact with people a certain way, but then when we have to truly see each other eye to eye and see each other, it's different. I didn't know it was you. There's so many different things we can say with that. It reminds me of a quote by Dr. Martin Luther King. It says, "People fail to get along because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. They don't know each other because they have not communicated with each other." And so that garden was an opportunity for them to finally communicate with each other and finally see each other and know each other, to Amir's point in the book. All right. So if you all can't tell, I'm pretty excited to talk about this book, even myself, and share my thoughts on it. Let's go to the next kind of section here. And I apologize. I know, audience, we said we had some questions for you. We hope you're enjoying the panel's discussion. We had a little snafu with getting the code for the questions, so we might have to skip that part, unfortunately. But we're going to continue the discussion here. Let's see. Let's talk about ourselves a little bit, or maybe some people that we admire. It doesn't have to be yourself, maybe somebody who you see doing some things like this. How do you personally make an effort to connect with your community? It's a pretty broad question there, but it can go a bunch of different ways. Anybody want to share with how do they or someone else they see make an effort to connect with their community? Jennifer.
So I'm very fortunate because I'm a teacher, and so my day-to-day life is connecting to my community, specifically Tobias, where I teach, which I love my school, and I've been there for 12 years. And I feel like I'm not originally from this area or Texas, and where I'm from, Hawaii is full of immigrants. In fact, it's not uncommon to listen to several different languages in a day. I mean, you can't go the whole day without hearing another language. So when Gonzalo says the older you are, the younger you become, that equation he kind of brings up, that really hit home with me because I can relate to especially older people and immigrants in the community where I'm from and their inability to articulate in a way that people understand and relate to. And so moving here, I'm very comfortable in that environment. But when I moved here, there are cultures here that I was not familiar with. But fortunately, my job helped me get to know the community through kids. Especially young kids. I taught kindergarten and now first grade. And I feel like every day my day is so full of love. And the love I share with them kind of ripples out into their families and into my community. And I think that it gives me such a deep connection to the families in Kyle because I think we all love our children. I think there's no more precious place in a community than a school. Right? In every community, our most valuable, precious people are our kids. And I think when you find a way to love somebody else's children, regardless of background, regardless of everything else, just love, right? You can't help but love one another. I say if you, to love our school, to all of the schools in our community, to know us is to love us. I don't know anybody who doesn't love kids. And so it gives me such a deep connection to my community, even though I'm not originally from here. I'm a seed folk. Right? I'm raising my boys in a place that I'm not from. My husband's not from. My boys are. We've planted these seeds. They're growing roots. But it's because of my job, I have these roots with my community. So I'm fortunate. I don't have to do much. It's just my everyday life connects me to all of you.
Absolutely, and I will say this, as a elected official in the community, I think the most honest people in our community are our children. They'll tell you exactly how they feel or think about something. Anybody else want to carry on, add to that topic? Johnny.
Yeah, so my brother used to work at a school in Austin, and what he would do is he would kind of go after school, and they would do kind of like a garden type thing. They would make a garden, and he had a little barn there, and they would have chickens and other animals. And he would always have the kids come after school, and they would just hang out. You know, they would get pizza, they would just talk, find out about each other, do all kinds of stuff like that. And for years, he would just do after-school activities with them. You know, like I said, whether it was the garden or stuff like that. And yeah, it was just great because I was also a kid at the time. So I got to meet the other kids, you know, and I lived down here and they lived up in Austin. So it was like connecting different communities together, not just one. So it was a really nice experience.
Wonderful. I love that. Anybody on this side of the panel want to take a shot? Fernando.
First of all, I want to thank you for teaching, and I share that same perspective in the sense that as educators, we're always engaged with our community, and certainly my role in human resources, having to work with different communities and then the broader community. You know, for me, in terms of how do I do that work, as I sit here thinking, how do I keep it even more local? Keeping it more local in the sense of this book really reminds me of the importance of really trying to understand every single conversation or relationship that I have with an employee, with a student, whoever it is. And I was thinking about a conversation, an author who said, every conversation is with yourself. And this book it took me back there. Because, there's what you want to say and then what you actually say and then what people hear and what they think you're saying. And so I think just being more intentional with every conversation that I have to ensure that I'm listening and that I'm communicating and just doing the best job of communicating so that we understand each other.
I love that, being intentional. I love that. Michelle, I believe you had your hand up.
Well, first of all, you do a great job of that. I have to tell you that. He does an excellent job of that. As a school counselor, I think I have to reach out to families, not just kids, but to parents and extended family. And my job as a counselor doesn't go into the realm of being a counselor. It's social worker sometimes. It's nurse. It's, goes beyond those things. And I'm thinking about a situation where I had some kids that were bickering, and it was a lot of gossip, and it was she did this and he did this and back and forth and back and forth. And I think one of the most poignant conversations we had was, what do you like about her and what do you like about her? And it took them a moment to kind of flip that script of she's doing this wrong and she's doing this wrong. But it flipped the script to the point of they were building each other up. And when they left, the relationship was a totally different relationship when it started. So I think it's really important that when we have those conversations to think about, what are we doing right and not just what are we doing wrong.
Great advice there. I love what you were talking about, and certainly we have a strong educational connection here on this panel. But I love what you said, Michelle. There's so many different hats, though, that you wear and what you have to do in your communities. And even as an educator, you almost have your psychiatry degree, you're a barber, you're doing all kinds of different things, right? So let's going back to the text a little bit here. We have the chapter on Nora, and just to refresh your memory a little bit, Nora was the one that cared after Mr. Miles in the wheelchair, and so as it describes in the text, Mr. Miles he doesn't really communicate, he doesn't really do a whole lot, but she starts to see this garden when she's out on a walk. Or they see a garden, come across the garden when they're out on the walk. Anybody want to share a little bit about what they thought when they read that chapter and how Mr. Miles transitioned in that chapter about himself and what that made you think about yourself and your community? Go for it, Fernando.
I just love the I just love the idea of that everyone has a place, and it's a matter of finding it, right? And so when he saw that garden and it kind of brought new life to him, it reminds us that how do we find our place? Where can we give? Where's that space to give? And so if we are always searching for that, it's going to be there. And so I just love that it woke him up in some kind of way and brought hope, and you could see that and hear that, in that particular story.
Excellent, excellent, absolutely. Anybody else? Jennifer, yes.
And I think also with him is that he couldn't communicate verbally, right? And I think we place a lot of value on a person's ability to communicate verbally in order for us to understand them. But there's so much more we can connect to beyond words, especially when you are communicating with somebody who doesn't speak the same language as you, right? You could feel so small, not feeling understood. But I think people who are nonverbal have value and have interests, and to see that in them, which can be a challenge because we live in a very verbal world. And so I think that he showed us that, how you can have interests and have value, and that there's still a desire to want to be a part of something and be seen, but the struggle of not being able to communicate that verbally.
Really great point on that. We'll take a quick little cut off here. We did get the Menti code in here, so we'll bring up our one of our questions. So we're not going to be able to do all of the audience, but we do want to get your feedback on some of these things. So we'll pull up the first Mentimeter question here. Once again, it'll be at menti.com. You see it there on your screen, MENTI.com. When you get to that website, you'll use the code 16880060. It's on your screen as well at the top there, and you'll be entered into the portal there for the question. And for the sake of those, it says, when thinking about the Hayes community, county and district and cities, what are some of the things you are most proud of? And feel free to shower the city of Kyle with as much praise as you like. And Buda, right? And Buda. We'll go back to discussion while our audience is entering their thoughts on that. Once again, menti.com there. We'll get the responses here in just a moment. But Michelle, I think you had some comments you wanted to add maybe on the discussion?
No, I was just going to say there's so much to be proud of.
Okay.
So I can't wait to see what they've said.
Can't wait to see what they say. Absolutely. So one of the other questions, while we're waiting to get that response there, one of the other questions that we wanted to ask the audience, but we'll ask the panel, a word or two describing your impressions or feelings of what our society and relations within our community need now more than ever. What is something that, obviously we talked about COVID the last couple of years. We've had other events that have happened now where we are in this year. Certainly the different social aspects that have happened over the couple of years. What are some of the things, maybe a couple words to just describe your impressions or feelings of what our society and relations within our community need now more than ever? Anybody want to flex their lexicon on us? Let's go, Johnny.
No, so I think that first and foremost, we definitely need friendship. I think everybody needs to learn to get to know each other really well. Just because somebody may have been rude to you one time or may have said something you didn't like, that doesn't mean on the inside there's something else there. So I think that's what our society really needs first off is people that, kind of like Michelle said earlier, listen and don't just talk. They need to learn and communicate and just, be good people and expect other people to be good people, but don't be surprised when they don't and just try to find the good in them either way.
Wow. Very powerful words there, Johnny. Thank you for that. Michelle.
Self-reflection. I think it's really important for everyone to acknowledge what we lack as individuals and where we can change, because nobody is perfect. But also, we shouldn't put people in boxes and say this is the way they are and this is the way they will always be. I think often it's safe to put people in a box because it protects us. But when we start thinking about the gray area, it causes our brain to grow, our hearts to grow, and acknowledging what we fall short in can also help us to grow personally.
Friendship, self-reflection. I love both of those. Anyone else want to add to that? Audrey, yes, so I was hoping we'd get you back in here.
Yeah, so as part of the DAC, we had this training a few months back, and it was called a NAEP training, and I don't really remember what the main title of the training was, but the one thing that I found was how much our community in our district could grow in being diverse and inclusive. And as children, I feel like we are kind of trained to put people in boxes. And, going through that training, it really shows you how much more there is to everyone and how we can become more inclusive. And so I feel like maybe as a district and as these cities, kind of opening our eyes and training each other on how to see people and how to see our community.
Absolutely. We'll come back to the panel on that topic. Let's see, do we have some responses yet on our Mentimeter question that we can provide to the audience and our panel to reflect on? All right. Panel, you should see on your screen in front of you there on the dais, hopefully. No? All right. Where we have here, certainly I think our audience can see the responses. We have a number of different them. I'll read some off for our panel. Caring people, committed to other caring people. Our diversity, progress, never settling when it could be better. The new wall, recognizing veterans. Thank you for that response. We'll be having a ribbon cutting for our Veterans Memorial, our first responders and Veterans Memorial later this year, September 11th. Volunteers, growing literally and spiritually. How Hayes CISD is leading the way with innovative ways to better support faculty and staff through human resources policies. Willingness to change. What else do we have here? Community events. Events are made for all to enjoy. We had our great Easter egg extravaganza here this morning, if any of you all joined us here at Greg Clark Park. Open dialogue. Let's see. I love the district's desire to grow through authentic conversation and reflect our city that is always evolving and changing. Really great responses there. Certainly proud of the district and their willingness to be open-minded, progress there. All right. So we've heard some of the responses there. Anybody have any thoughts or anything they would like to add from the panel here? Are you all seeing them now on your screen? Okay. LaVonia.
So again, my hat's off to all of you as educators. I think that was the piece, that was the biggest part for me as a parent with my kids attending school here in Hayes CISD, is how much the teachers cared. I mean, my youngest son is 26, and if he sees a teacher now, he just runs over and gives her a big hug, and I'm like, you were probably a terror back in the day. But they are such wonderful, caring people, and they continue to be that way. So my hat's off to the administration for continuing to hire people that care about our children and want to make sure that they get the best possible education. So thank you.
Appreciate that response. Anyone else want to give some feedback on what the audience had to say about that question? Michelle.
I think we don't settle when an issue happens. We are ready to jump on it and make changes and have dialogue in order to make things better. Because we could just let it happen, with snow, the snow, whatever happening. We could say, well, this will be over in 3 days or a week or 2 weeks, and then we'll just move on from there. But instead, making a plan, looking at it as a community and trying to make changes regardless of what it is. I think that's important, and we do a great job of that.
Anyone else want to add or even give their own personal pride about?
Yeah, so all of this on this panel, on this screen here, is reflective of leadership. And so this is really thanking our leaders. I know our superintendent, Eric, is here, And so and I know that you're a leader, we've got leaders here, and I just want to say that without the leaders that set the tone, that provide these opportunities for events like this to happen, for policies to change. We've got our board member, Esperanza Orozco, here that supports all of these different policies that allow for change. And so the leadership is so important, that we're engaged in our community, selecting our leaders, ensuring that they're our right leaders to move the work forward. And so I just want to comment on the importance of that, accessibility to leadership and the importance of leadership.
Absolutely. I had noticed that response too when you were speaking, the accessibility to leaders, and certainly grateful to Dr. Wright being here, our Hayes CISD superintendent and board member on our school board, Esperanza Orozco, here as well. That just shows that commitment and being involved, and we certainly appreciate that leadership as well. So thank you, Fernando, for highlighting that. Anyone else want to comment on that particular part there? All right, while we're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and queue up for the next Mentimeter question. We'll give a moment for that to come up there as well. And once again, same code, 1688-0060. Our next and final question. Let's see here. We'll go with that one. All right. Okay. Let's see. Grant, do we have the one word describing the event? One ready? We'll give him a moment to get that pulled up there. Anybody else have anything else that they really would like to highlight from the book here? We are going into, just so everyone knows, so here in about 10 minutes, we'll break up into small group discussion for anyone here in the audience that wants to participate, along with our panel, to have small group discussions about the book as well. But since we're still in our broadcast public part of this program, anybody else want to share anything else from the book that really stood out to them, really burning thing that they wanted to talk about when they came to have a discussion on this panel? I know we've covered a lot of different things already.
You mentioned, Audre, the training, the NAEP training, which was a wonderful training. One thing that really stuck with me with that training was a phrase that one of the trainers used, and that was, "What else could be true?" And through all of these different vignettes, there was a lot of implicit bias, a lot of this idea of micro messages or just all of these things throughout the entire book. And it reminded me of that phrase that trainer said. When that lady looked down at that little girl bearing those seeds, and immediately she thought she was up to no good. And whenever we find ourselves in that situation, placing judgment, some kind of judgment, to pause and to ask ourselves, what else could be true?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because when our mind immediately goes to the negativity, maybe someone said self-reflection earlier, why are we immediately going to the most negative thing in our mind? Right, exactly. Pause, reflect. What else could be true? Exactly. Love that, love that. Any other responses? Jennifer?
Well, it's kind of about Seedfolks on the last question, and I think in Buda and Kyle, we're growing at such a fast rate that many of us are Seedfolks. I mean, many of us we're not born and raised here, but we're choosing these cities to grow and raise our families. And I think that is a great responsibility. Because as we grow, we want to make sure we're doing it in a healthy, inclusive way. And so I think that this book was so appropriate because many of us, and a huge portion of both cities, are Seedfolks. And I think something to be proud of is I know I live in Buda and I work in Kyle, and everybody has been so kind. I think everybody is conscious about wanting to do it the right way, wanting to grow with inclusivity and kindness. And so to me, I connected the book to that we are in the process as cities of having so many Seedfolks come here, and a responsibility that comes with that, but also that our intention, I think, is so good. It's so pure. We want these cities to be the best they can be. Although we're so different from the city in this book, it's a very similar motive, to make a better place as we grow and raise our families here.
I love that response. And before we get the responses on the last Mentimeter question back up, I just want to give some flowers to the author, Paul Fleischman. So for those who don't know, when you talk about giving somebody flowers, that's giving them their praise, you know, before. Mr. Fleischman has every chapter is a different person's perspective with a very different background, different culture, different perspective, different ages, right? And it's all being seen through the eyes of this author. You know, even as he writes, you can tell how they talk is in a different way and different things like that. Anything that jumped out to the panel, reading through the chapters and noticing what Mr. Paul Fleischman did through the character and through the way he was speaking through each character that really stood out to you all? Anybody have any thoughts on that? Or is that just Dex and his own little mind there? Michelle.
When I was reading it, I was thinking, because one of the questions I was thinking about is what resonates most with me, which character does, but I think there are pieces of each character that resonate most with me, so which also tells us that for him, each piece of the character resonates most with him. So just going, okay, this person in these kinds of situations or this person and their background really weighed on my heart. And then in this person and this background and their attitude toward this, that weighed heavily on me. And so I think that was kind of a common thread.
I love that because we're not just a monolith of emotions as well. We carry a lot of different emotions, right? And so I think, just to your point, Michelle, you could probably see a little bit of our emotions in ourselves within each character in the book and things we may have gone through in life as well. So really great point. Let's transition back now into our final Mentimeter question. This was one word to describe this event. Great way to kind of come to a conclusion on the public conversation here. Panel, you should be able to see the different terms there. For you all that don't know, the larger the term, that just means that multiple people have used it. Obviously, the larger it gets, the more people have used it. But we'll give you a few seconds more for the audience to continue to provide any responses if they haven't yet, and then give the panel a moment to read through all the responses, and then we'll get your reflection of that. Seeing some good terms there. All right, panel. Anybody want to jump into what they're seeing on the screen? Any terms jump off to them that really... yes, Audrey.
Yeah, so one word is beginning. I love that word because it means that we're just at the start of something, right? There's so much to, get to experience. And with DAC, I feel like that's a great way of showing just the beginning of us reaching out and being more inclusive. And so that's, just prosperous word. It gets you excited for what's to come.
I love seeing the perspective through youth here as well. We have a great representative of that today in Audrey, and certainly appreciate your insight on this panel today. And thank you for your leadership as well amongst your peers and those that educate you as well. We are inspired just as much as we teach and educate and lead as well. Anybody else have anything else they want to mention? Johnny.
Yeah, so one word I really like on here is future, because I believe everything starts with the children and planting seeds into them to have them be kind as they get older, have them not be afraid to reach out to somebody. If you see somebody sitting alone at a lunch table, don't let them sit alone. Go over there, talk to them, see what's going on in their head. And future is the one thing we look forward to, and that's what we got to focus on.
That's really good. Planting the seed. I'm not sure if you did that on purpose, but they're very, very well done. Let's see what you did there. So beginning, future. I love that. Love that. Anybody else have any other terms that we'll go to LaVonia and then we'll come to Michelle.
Well, the big one for me is just having a hopeful community. I mean, if you've got hope, that means there's always a possibility of something changing or improving or growing in the future. So that creates that sense of starting at the beginning, looking forward to that future. So.
Love that. Michelle.
I was going to say necessary. Necessary because we want the community to grow, but also for peace in the community as well.
Fantastic. Anybody else want to take on that topic? Or we're wrapping up here. Any last second thoughts that you all like to share with our broadcast here and our folks watching all around our communities? Any final thoughts on the book or this event, or is anything else you'd like to share with us today? All right. Well, with that being said, I want to give a round. I want to give if we could acknowledge our wonderful panel today and the wonderful discussion they had about our text today. All right. So with that being said, we're a couple of minutes early, but we're going to go ahead and wrap up the program today. We certainly appreciate you tuning in today. And certainly if you watched today and if you know anyone that wasn't able to see this program today and you found it inspirational and certainly something you'd like to share, we will have this available on our City of Kyle YouTube channel. It will live forever on our City of Kyle Facebook page. It will be as well played over time on Channel 10 Spectrum as well. So feel free to check it out at your leisure. Wonderful discussion here, really fantastic. I would love to dive in even further in some of the things you all said today, but I loved what you all even brought to the conversation. We all read the same book, right? And we probably shared a lot of the same perspectives, but we also heard various different things that even for me, I'll say, had my mind jogging about the same text that I read. It makes me want to read it all over again. All right. Well, with that being said, thank you again. Certainly thank you to Hayes CISD, our leadership, our superintendent, our school board, the wonderful, I want to share on behalf of the City of Kyle and our comms team, our thanks to the Diversity Advisory Council. Could we give them a round of applause? This was truly their brainchild, and much of the heavy lifting was done by them. City of Kyle was just happy to support it and provide our resources and mediums to broadcast this and provide it to the community. And we're happy to help in any time in the future. All right, with that being said, we'll close out our inaugural One Community, One Book event. Thank you again for tuning in. We hope you have a great weekend.